moving everything slightly sideways. The bizarre nature of the stories the shift threw up appealed to her, but the news editors didn't want surprising, surreal vignettes. They wanted flat, dull news stories, the who, what and when. Rarely the why or the guess what. Her exhaustion coloured everything. She found herself a foot in the wrong direction to meet anyone's eye. Her own lonely heart alone in the universe, a beat out of step with everyone else. She caught Tam's eye as she approached the Panda car. "Meehan," he said. "All right, Tam. Is that you back from your holidays?" "Aye." "Nice time?" 2 weeks with the wife and a 6-month-old wean," sneered Tam. "You work it out." He was the same age as Paddy, in his early 20s, but monkeyed the genuine melancholy of the older officers. "So," she took her notebook out of her pocket, "what brought you out here?" She had heard the call on the police radio in the car. The neighbours were complaining about cars pulling noisily into the drive and shouting. It wasn't a neighbourhood that would tolerate much nightlife. Tam rolled his eyes. Noise complaint. Cars screeching, front door slamming, shouting. Paddy raised her eyebrows. Noise complaints took 2 minutes. The household opened the door, promised to keep it down, and everyone went home. Tam glanced at the door. "There's a woman inside with blood on her face." "Did he hit her?" "I suppose. Either that, or she's been punching herself in the mouth." Tam chuckled at his joke, but Paddy had the feeling he'd made it before, or heard it from someone else. She didn't smile back. "Not really the right neighbourhood for a noisy party on a Monday night," Tam huffed. "Seen the motors?" He nodded to 2 shiny BMWs parked in the shadows around the back of the tall house. One was a big, imposing car, the other a sports car, but they matched somehow, like his and hers wedding rings. Paddy didn't know much about cars, but she knew that the price of one of them would pay her family's rent for 3 years. Together they looked at the man. "Is Dan going to lift him?" "Nah," said Tam. "The woman wants us to leave it. Vary Burnett. She's a lawyer. One of us." Paddy was surprised. "She's prosecution?" "Aye." He pointed at the police officer at the door. "Dan there knows her from the High Court. Says she's decent, but, why doesn't she want him prosecuted?" Paddy thought it was pretty obvious why a woman wouldn't want to bring a criminal prosecution against any man who had a key to her front door. Her oldest sister, Caroline, regularly turned up at the house with big bruises on her arms and went mad when anyone mentioned them. The family were Catholic. Leaving wasn't always an option. Paddy could have corrected Tam, but it was 2 a.m, and she heard the same lazy, simple-minded shit from officers attending domestic incidents every night. But she depended on them for stories and couldn't call them on it. Despite her courting them and never contradicting, the night shift guys still sensed her distance and went behind her back, feeding the best stories to other journalists, guys they watched football with or drank near. Banishing thoughts of her fading career, Paddy turned towards the house. The first thing she noticed about the dark-haired man was his mouth-watering figure, tall with long legs and slim hips. He stood with his weight on one foot, hips to one side, tolerating Dan's chat. His lashes were long and dark, and he kept his eyes a little shut, as though the weight of his lashes forced him to a languid expression. The conservative white shirt had a thin salmon-pink stripe. Over it he wore black braces with shiny steel buckles, expensive black shoes, and suit trousers. It looked like a work uniform. His face was calm and smiling, although his fingers fidgeted nervously on the door handle behind him. He was beautiful. Paddy sauntered slowly over to the door, staying near the house, keeping in the shadows. Dan, the questioning officer, nodding at his notebook as the man spoke. "Dan, it won't happen again." He seemed quite casual, and Paddy could see that Dan had no intention of taking him in, not even just to lock him in the cells for a couple of hours and teach him a lesson about being a snotty shite. She had seen Dan and Tam at many midnight disturbances, and they weren't known for their tolerance. Dan was a fit man for all he was thin and older. She'd seen him being cheeked up and using his wiry frame to introduce a couple of faces to the side of his squad car. Dan dropped his eyes, scratching something into his pad with a stubby pencil. Thinking himself unobserved, the man dropped his guard and Paddy saw a twitch of excitement as his hands tensed over the handle. "OK," said Dan. "You'll need to keep it down. If we get another call, we'll have no option but to take some sort of action." "Sure. Don't worry about it." Dan shut his notebook and backed off the step. "Maybe you should get her seen to." "Definitely." He seemed to relax for a moment. Paddy stepped into the circle of yellow light in front of the door. "Hello, I'm Paddy Meehan from the Scottish Daily News. Could I talk to you about the police being called here?" The man glared at Dan, who shrugged a little and backed away to the Panda car. Up close, his eyes were Paul Newman blue and his lips pink, fleshy. She wanted to touch them with her fingertips. His eyes read Paddy's second-hand green leather coat, the spiky dark hair, beige suede pixie boots and her large gold hoops. She saw him notice the red enamel thumb ring on her right hand. It was cheap, bought from a hippie shop, and the blue speckles of enamel were crumbling and falling out. "Like your look," he smiled, but she could tell he was lying. "Thanks. Your look's a bit business, isn't it?" He swept his shirt front straight and tucked a thumb under his braces. "Like it." He shifted his weight, drawing her attention to his hips. It was a bit too explicit, too overt to be casually flirtatious. She didn't like it. "So, have you been beating your wife?" "Excuse me?" He held his left hand up and showed her his bare third finger in defence. He wasn't married. "Do you know Dan?" He looked her square in the face, eyes clouded over. "I don't know Dan." She frowned and raised a sceptical eyebrow. "Dan?" The familiarity of the first name gave their relationship away more than his manner towards the policeman. He shrugged as if he didn't care whether she believed him or not, and ran his fingers through his black hair. She could hear the crisp crumple of the fine starched linen on his shirt sleeve. The door fell open a foot behind him. Paddy saw an imposing Victorian hall stand, dark oak with hooks for hats, a stand on the arm for umbrellas and walking sticks. In the middle of the dark wood frame was a large mirror, and reflected in the glass, she saw a woman's frightened face. The pretty blonde was standing in the door that led to the living room, listening. Slim-necked and fine-featured, the tips of her blonde bob were stained pink with blood. As she watched Paddy through the mirror, her slender fingers cartwheeled the curtain of hair behind her ear, revealing a bloody jaw. A thin slash of scarlet ran from the side of her mouth to her chin, down her neck and over her collarbone, soaking into the wide Lady Di lace ruff on her white blouse. For a slither of a moment their eyes met, and Paddy saw the vacant expression she'd seen many times at car crashes and fights, a look saturated with shock and pain. She raised her eyebrows at the blonde, asking if she wanted help. But the woman gave a half shake of the head and broke off eye contact, sliding backwards in the doorway and out of the mirror. The man saw Paddy looking and pulled the door closed at his back. "We're fine, really." He smiled warmly and nodded, as if thanking Paddy for coming to a nice party. The porchway light was weak and yellow, but she saw it suddenly. Blood on his own neck in among the short black hairs. They were spots, flecks from spray. He smiled at her. She could see the glint of flint in his eyes. "Have you beaten her before?" He was getting irritated, but only a little bit. He glanced over at Tam and Dan by the squad car, and Paddy followed his gaze. Dan shook his head, giving the man an answer, sending a signal Paddy didn't understand. He took a tired breath. "Won't you wait for a moment, please?" Opening the door less than half a foot, he slipped inside. For a moment, as the door fell towards the jamb, Paddy thought he had done the sensible thing and shut her out, but he came back smiling a second later. He leaned forward and put something in Paddy's hand. "I can't stress enough how important it is that this doesn't get in the paper." It was a £50 note. "Please." The note was damp and pink with blood. Paddy glanced